Good morning, my name is Blake. I have the privilege of being the pastor here at Snyder Memorial Baptist Church, and good on you for being here today. Congratulations for being here. We're in this series where we're talking about becoming, and the reason we're going to wrap this series up today. And we're talking about becoming because every one of us in this room right now, we are in the state of becoming. Now, who we become, what we become, that will happen either by accident or it will happen by intention. For those of us who follow Jesus, we have this desire. We understand that it's not just a desire, it's actually a destiny to be conformed into the image of Jesus, that we can become like Jesus. That's our aim. That's the journey that God set us on when He saved us. Now, fortunately, not fortunately, actually blessedly, mercifully for us, there are things that you can do and that I can do, things that we can do intentionally that will make us more aware of God and more like Jesus. We call these things spiritual disciplines, and we've looked at 4 spiritual disciplines so far. We've looked at biblical intake. Biblical intake forms and informs every other spiritual discipline. These things that we can actually do, the things that you can leave here doing today that will make you more aware of God and more like Jesus. Biblical intake is the first. It informs and forms all the other spiritual disciplines. And then there's daily prayer. There's weekly worship. Last week, we talked about generosity and how that forms us into the image of Christ. It makes us more aware of God and more like Jesus. Today, we're going to actually talk about a spiritual discipline that will make you great. I'm talking about great. I didn't say it would make you good. Spiritual disciplines don't make you good, but this particular spiritual discipline will make you great. And I mean like great among men, great among women, like great among humankind. And I'm really not the one to say it. Really, Jesus is the one that said it. And if you've been here before or if you grew up in church, you might be thinking, well, I know what's coming here. And you may, but I want to invite you to read this for the first time. And if you are new to church and you are new to Jesus' teachings, this is going to be amazing to you because you're about to hear the Son of God speak words and give you a pathway to greatness, and it's going to be quite surprising. This is what Jesus says beginning in Matthew 20:26. This is what He says. He says, whoever would be great among you must. Now, you fill that in. You begin to think, if you've never read this before, if this is new to you, whoever's going to be great, they must go get an education. If they're going to be great, they need to be determined. They must work hard. They must never stay quit. They must be a little bit taller, right? This is greatness. This is what greatness is about, right? Coming out ahead of everybody else. But Jesus says something that is really quite odd. He says, the greatest among you must be your servant. You read that for the first time as if you've never read it before and you're like, somebody must have copied this down wrong. This can't be right. This doesn't seem right because somebody must have copied it down wrong because the person that's the greatest is not the servant. The person that's the greatest is the person that has the servants. It's the person that has people waiting on them. It's the boss. The people that answer are not the greatest. And yet Jesus says that the greatest among us would be our servant. And what He begins to chisel in stone is that in His mind, and you're going to find out in His movement, that greatness equals service. But if you're reading this for the first time and you're kind of familiar with the way that Jesus teaches, you might think, well, really what Jesus is doing here, this is some of that hyperbole, right? He's kind of making a really, he's speaking in extreme language so that He can make a point. Well, He is speaking in extreme language, but that is so that He can explain in high detail and high resolution what He means. So he uses this wonderful Hebrew method of teaching, and he uses redundancy. He basically says the same thing with different words. And just so everybody will know he's not speaking in hyperbole, he moves a step further and he says, whoever would be first among you must. We know what it is to be first, right? King of the mountain. You know, the person that's first, they climb up the ladder. And they step on anyone who is in their way to get to the top. That's what it means to be first. First means that you beat all your enemies, real or potential ones. That's first. You beat everyone. Indiana is number 1 in college football this year because they beat everybody. They're number 1. They're first. First in the nation. And Jesus says, whoever would be first must be your slave. And these two words that he uses, servant and slave, they're not ambiguous words. He's being an extreme, but he's also being very exact. Servant, it is the Greek word dekonomos, or dekonos. It's where we get the word deacon from. It means servant. It means someone that does someone else's bidding. The word slave, doulos, in the Greek, it means slave or bondservant. A little bit different than the brutality that we experienced in early American history, but not much. Many times the slave in this context would be someone who was enslaved for, say, 10 years to pay off a debt. That was the only way they were going to be able to pay it off. But what this signifies and what Jesus is teaching in this moment is he is looking at the rungs of society and he's saying, hey, listen, whoever's going to be the greatest, whoever's going to be first, they're going to be at the bottom rung. And actually, they're not even going to be on the ladder. They're not even going to be on the ladder. Understand, a slave and a servant in the early world, they had no hopes, no imagination whatsoever for some kind of reward or recognition. That's not what they were after. And see, the reason that we miss greatness in America today is because we confuse being great at something with actually being a great someone. We think it's just a fallacy that's built into our society now. If someone can consistently hit a 3-point shot from the baseline and do it just about every time, they are going to be great. They're going to get a great scholarship. They're going to probably make a great deal of money in the NBA. They're going to get great opportunities to do advertising. They might get a great job as a commentator when they retire. They're going to have a great life. But all of that is just about being great at something. So much so that sometimes we'll get interested in some popular figure, right? An actor or a politician or a business leader, and we'll read about their greatness, and somewhere along in reading the biography, we might look up and look at our spouse or our friend and say, you know, so-and-so is a really great football coach, but he's also a good guy. As though being good is kind of a consolation prize, you know? Where Jesus calls us beyond being good at something to actually greatness. Like he gets to the core of who we are. Because whatever we do in this life, that is not going to be essentially who we are. He pushes much deeper than that. Now, what I've done here is I've set you down in the middle of a conversation. This is like what my sister used to do to us when we were watching TV, and she would come in about halfway through the movie, and she would start asking questions about why are they doing this and why are they doing that. Frustrate the daylights out of us, you know, and you couldn't pause it back then, you know. Had to wait for a commercial or something, and you just got to see it, Shannon, some other time, you know. These words that we've looked at by Jesus, this is not part of a teaching. Like he wasn't teaching this on the Sermon on the Mount. He didn't say, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs will be the kingdom of God, and then say, blessed are the servants, for they will be great. No, this happened on an occasion in a context that created conflict. And I want you to see this. I want us to back up and look at the Matthew 20:20. How this all began. Why he said this in the first place. It turns out that the mother of James and John, Mrs. Zebedee, I like to call her, she comes up to Jesus with her sons in tow, and he kneels before Jesus and she asks him for something. And he said to her, "What do you want?" And she said to him, "Say to these two sons of mine, tell them that they are to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left in your kingdom." I mean, Jesus, you know my boys. You know Jimmy and Johnny. They're good guys. Jimmy and Johnny, they have been with you since the very beginning. And so, hey, and you got to give her credit, right? She recognizes the greatness of Jesus. She recognizes that he's heading somewhere. But it's really not about his greatness, is it? And you're going to see this in a moment. It's not about his greatness. It's about her position and prestige. It's about her son's position and prestige. Can you imagine if Jesus gives this request, when she sits down with the other Jewish mothers and they're talking? I mean, you know, she probably won't say very much. She'll let everybody else talk. You know, well, my son, he's got the lumber company now. He's doing really well. Well, you know, my son, he's a lawyer. Well, my son, you know, he's got several flocks now, and it's really growing. And then she just wait to the last and go, "Well, you know, my sons, they sit on the right and left hand of Jesus. How about that?" You know? She's positioning. She's politically moving and posturing so that she can get her boys there. And you know what? Her boys want her to do this. They wanted Mama to come talk to Jesus for them. And see, there's this conversation that ensues that we won't take time to look at today, because I think it's more important that as we move toward what will make us great, the spiritual discipline that would make us great, that we see how it is birthed. It is birthed out of a moment of conflict. It's birthed out of a moment of the movement of Jesus beginning to fracture, beginning to fall apart. Because the result of this request is that it's the result whenever pride and selfish ambition enters into any family, business, or church, there begins to be division. And so the result of this is that when the other 10 hear this, they became indignant with James and John. They're upset. They're mad. The Zebedees, they have drawn a circle around themselves, put Jesus in the middle of it, and the other 10 are outside of it. And it's not good. And the thing is fracturing. Like right at the very start of the movement, right under the nose of Jesus, it's fracturing. Because of the evil that's afoot. Because of the extreme vileness that is happening at this moment. And you think, well, Preacher Blake, that's really strong language for someone just kind of wanting to be real near Jesus. I mean, you can't, I mean, it's Mama's just looking out for her boys. Is it really that evil and vile? Yeah, it really is. And James, the half-brother of Jesus, he would write this later on. This is James 3:16. And it says this: "For where you have jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder in every vile thing." Every vile thing. Oh, no. Not there. That's not where you're going to find vile things. If you want to find every vile thing, if you want to find every evil thing, Preacher Blake, what you need to do is you need to go to Hollywood. That's where every vile thing is. I mean, the source of every vile thing, it has to be communism, right? Do you not see what's happening in Ukraine right now? I mean, every vile thing. Every vile thing is radical Islam. No. Every vile thing is the political party that I don't agree with. That's every vile thing. That's where that comes from. It doesn't come from out there. It comes from in here. That's where every vile thing is. Mercifully, blessedly for us, we have this spiritual discipline called service that will keep that vileness at bay. But what is Jesus going to do in this moment? And we need to note this. If pride and jealousy and selfish ambition, if that can happen in the movement that Jesus started right when he started it, right under his nose, we're foolish to think that it won't happen in our family or happen in our friend group or happen in our church. We need to look at what Jesus does in this moment, because in this moment, what he does and what he says, it is so very powerful. And it's what we need to do ourselves. It says, verse 25, but Jesus called them to himself. When things begin to fracture in our relationships, in our organizations, and in our churches, in our mission organizations, if we would just begin to remember to come to Jesus, that he's the center of it, he's the reason for it, he is the all of it, and there's nothing outside of him, then there's healing there. But listen to what he says. He begins to show them how there's two ways in life, and they diverge away from one another. The first way, he says, but Jesus called him to himself, and he says, you know the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. That's how it works. That's the way the world works. The boss is boss. The commanders command. The people with the most money make the decisions. The people with the most power have the most power, so they exercise that power. And they're great ones. They have great ones. That's what he says, that their great ones exercise authority over them. He's looking at these 12 men and he's saying, you know how this works. And James and John, you know this is what you want. And the 10 of you, you're upset at them because it's what you want too. He says that's how it works. And then I think there are these moments in Jesus' ministry where he speaks words and he catches eyes as he speaks them. Like he locks eyes. And I think the next 7 to 8 words that Jesus speaks, he speaks it slowly enough that he can catch all 12 sets of eyes. And he says this, it shall not be so among you. That's not how it's going to work. That's not the path that we're running on. And then he chisels in stone, not just this spiritual discipline, but a core value for anyone who has ever followed Jesus. Whoever's going to be great among you will be your servant, and whoever's going to be first among you will be your slave. And so for those of us who we run up against our jealousy and our pride and we kind of want to take care of me and mine, we have a starting point here. Jesus gives us a starting point. And the starting point is just simply this, to follow his example. Just to follow his example. And in order to follow his example, we need to intake the Word of God, because he was the Word made flesh. In order to follow his example, we must pray daily. In order to follow his example, we must worship weekly. In order to follow his example, we have to be generous, like we talked about last week. And if we're going to follow his example, we're going to serve others. And Jesus shows that he's the example and so much more when he says, even me, even as the Son of Man came not to be served. Jesus did not come to recline. He came to advance. He didn't come to retreat. He came to move forward. He didn't come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. I'm giving it all up for you guys. Follow my example. And so if you're here this morning and you're beginning to just kind of feel this pull in your heart and you're beginning to think, I want to serve. I remember what it was like to serve. Or some of you might not even be a Jesus follower yet, and you're thinking, I want to serve. And many times, anybody can begin to do something for someone and not expect anything in return, and something kind of rattles around in our chest, Christian or non-Christian, and it just kind of feels good, right? When we do something for someone and we're not expecting anything in return, you know what that is? Rattling around? That's the image of God rattling around in us when we do that. And so you may have that rattling around in you right now, and you're like, I need to serve. I want to practice the spiritual discipline of serving. I'm going to get real practical in a moment, but I need you to consider two things before you jump into it. And here's the first thing I need you to consider is this, that service is a frontal attack on two of the most fatal flaws of human nature. It's a frontal attack on two of the most fatal flaws of human nature. And what I mean by fatal is it'll kill us. Fatal, like fatality. Flaws, it's just hardwired into us because of the fall. And those two fatal flaws are pride and laziness. It's going to push back on you as you begin to serve. It'll push back. And it'll say things like this. It'll say things like, I don't have enough time to serve. Nobody has enough time to serve. Nobody does. We all have the same amount of time. There's nobody in this room that's got, 36 hours in a day. They got 12 hours and they're going, well, you know what? I got 12 extra hours, so I'm going to serve now. It's never going to happen. This is a spiritual discipline. They were called the disciples because they were disciplined. No one, we think things are going to be easy. Things are not easy. I mean, when we practice disciplines, they're not easy. The easy stuff comes easy to us. My wife has never looked at me and said, Blake, hey, you need to make a little bit more time to watch Alabama football. You need to do that. Or Blake, I've noticed lately you haven't been eating enough chocolate cake. I'm afraid that your cholesterol level is going to really drop. We need to get that thing back up, No. Look, I know that we love busyness in America. I get that. Following Jesus takes discipline. Following Jesus will make time. And I understand there are seasons that we go through. If you're an accountant right now and it's January to April the 15th, you're trying to find time to do things like, take a shower and sleep and stuff. I get that. Another thing that we'll say when pride or laziness pushes back on us, we'll say, hey, listen, I'm just not gifted that way. That's just not my gift. I don't like working with the little humans. There's other things to do besides work with the little humans. I understand. You understand, but man, God is calling you to serve. And as He calls you to serve, if you'll just step into it, He will reveal to you what your gift is. And many times the places that He calls you to serve initially is not where your gift is. It just opens the door to where your giftedness is. I mean, why would God even show us what our giftedness is if we're not willing to serve? And you step into the service, and I've seen it happen. The other thing that will happen sometimes is that we'll begin to serve, and we'll go, this is just not what I had in mind when I began to serve. It's not what I had in mind. It's a little underwhelming. There's not much to it. I'm just saying hello to people as they walk in the door. I'm just saying bye to them as they leave. Or it might be the opposite. It might be just overwhelming. I didn't know it would be this hard. I didn't know it would hurt this much. I didn't know it would be this difficult. There's a story that has stuck with me out of the mission in Calcutta that Mother Teresa ran for all those years. There was an American short-term, person going on a missionary trip, like a 2-week missionary trip, and she went there to work alongside the Carmelite nuns there in Calcutta. And she's helping throughout the week, and she's kind of shadowing one of the nuns one day, and this nun and her go into a room where there's a leprosy patient being taken care of, and it's time to change the leprosy patient's bandages. It is a grotesque service. It looks bad, it smells bad, and those areas on that person's body where the nerve endings have not already numbed, it feels bad. But this person on the mission trip stands there and watches this nun do the work and assist as best as she can. They take care of the patient's at rest. They walk out of the door, and the person from America looks at this nun and says to her, "I wouldn't do what you do for $1 million." And the nun looks back at her and says, "Neither would I. Neither would I." Because it's not about the position, it's not about the prestige, it's not about any kind of reward or recognition. See, here's the other thing you need to consider, is that if you follow Jesus into the discipline of service, your heart will get larger. It will feel more, and part of that feeling will be joy unspeakable, but part of that feeling will also be pain. Jesus, when he drew near to the city of Jerusalem, and he stood outside of it, knowing what was about to transpire, and knowing the love that he had for the people in that city and how special that city was to him and to his Father, he wept. He didn't tear up. His voice didn't crack. He wept. When was the last time you wept over Fayetteville? When was the last time we looked at this city? Let's just take just one high school in our city. Let's just take Terry Sanford. High school students. Great high school. Love all the students that I get to meet with and be around at that school. But do you know that this morning, statistically, less than 50% of them will be in any church anywhere? Several months ago, we had an exercise with our students on Sunday night. We had a moment for them just to come up and write on a board what was troubling them. All the things that troubled them. After they wrote these things on the board, I sat down on the front row and began to look. As they had left, I just sat there in an empty auditorium. Giles Blankenship came up and sat beside me, then a few other youth leaders, and we just kind of sat in stunned silence as we looked at what they had written on the board. Not all of them wrote, just a few of them. This is the world they live in. Hate. Pray for our country. Fear of the world. Fear of our world's future. I guess maybe when I was in high school, I was kind of concerned about the country, but not the whole world. Anxiety about the past and the future. Anxiety for the future. Felt rushed, stress. You start following Jesus into areas of service, and you are going to have your heart broken. And you're going to experience joy deeper than you ever imagined. So how does it start? It starts right where you are. It starts where you're living. That's where you start, right where you are, where you're living. Start with your family. If you've got a little brother, time to start serving him. Got a little sister, time to start serving him. Yeah, it'll be one of the most challenging ways that you in your young life will begin to grow up. Because that's not little sister, little brother thing, that's grown-up thing. That's Jesus thing. When you begin to serve those in your family. I have a friend named Steve Mazak. He married this beautiful Georgia Tech cheerleader named Savina. And we did her wedding, and Ashton was a part of the wedding, and Bev was there helping and stuff. And about a year or so into their marriage, Steve started asking, never pestering Sabina with this question, but just would ask her from time to time this one question. He would ask her, what do I do when you feel most loved by me? What am I doing when you feel most loved by me? Profound question, right? I started asking Bev that question, and she said, well, when you play with Ashton on the floor, when you get on the floor and play with Ashton on the floor. I can't do that too much anymore. It would look awkward if I did that, but Ashton's 27 for those of you who don't know. But then she started saying, when you tell me? Years later, she started saying, well, when you wash the dishes, vacuum, that kind of stuff. Not real romantic. Vacuuming. That's not in any romance novel, right? That's service, though. That's service. Start where you are. You can also start where you worship, weekly worship. And let me just mention, at Snyder, we like to give service opportunities this way. On our campus, in the community, and around the world. Now, we're kind of out of time now. But I want you to be aware that in the vestibule, on your way out this morning, there's opportunities for you to sign up in children's ministry. Now, not everybody can volunteer in children's ministry. It requires a background check and it requires training. But man, if Jesus did anything, he set the bar of service pretty high when it came to children. Because it's in ministering to children, you're touching the future and you're working hard. There's also our welcome team. You could volunteer on that. They've got a table set up back there. You could begin serving either every week or once a month. You can serve every week or once a month in children's ministry. But you think about that welcome team for a moment. You think about the city that we live in. You think about the world that we live in, the country that we live in, the jobs that some people have. You understand that there are some Sunday mornings when people walk into this church that the only kind word they get to hear all week is, hey, so glad you're here. So glad that you came today. Do you know where you're going? Can I walk you there? That just sounds a lot like Jesus to me. There's our tech team. That's the third place you can serve on campus. And our tech team, they make sure that those that are at home right now that wish you could be with us, but because of health and other reasons you're not here, we miss you. And we're so glad that our tech team makes it where you can see us and hear us and worship with us. And they also just make things look good. They make sure my head's polished and shiny. Not really, they just put lights on it so it's shiny. But yes. See, if we'll volunteer on the campus, if we'll take care of here, we'll be able to continue to go to the community. We'll be able to continue. If we take care of here, we'll be able to continue to go there. In the community, next month, we're going to do a Blitz Day. And in the city of Fayetteville, we're going to do numerous ways that we can serve this community. We can serve our city in the way Jesus would have us to do. As some things as extravagant as putting roofs on a house, or that's leaking, or just a potted plant and taking it to a neighbor around Haymount here and saying, hey, listen, just want you to know we're here for you. We love you. Looks a lot like Jesus. And all sorts of things in between. You can sign up for that today, and we'll send you a notification of when you can sign up for a particular project. There's many of them. And that's just one day. And it's almost a half a day sometimes. And then there's the opportunity to go around the world, and that's our Kenya trip. And I've said this before, I've been able to be involved in ministry around the world. What we're doing in Kenya, it is one of the most remarkable ministries I've ever been around. It's almost unbelievable what's happening there and what we're getting to be a part of. I'm about ready to go back myself just simply because I'm not sure I believe what I saw there. It's been that long. And it's just that remarkable. You can sign up for that. Today's the last day that you can do that. Now, as you think about those things that you're praying about, serving, if you're not serving somewhere, if you are serving somewhere, thank you so much. But as you pray about those things, I want us just to slow down, and for the last 10 minutes together this morning, I want us to take communion together. And as we take communion, I grew up calling it the Lord's Supper, but as we do this, look at your heart. Make sure that there's nothing in your heart that is contrary to God, nothing that's breaking His law or breaking His heart. Confess anything in your life that might be out of order. Just kind of do a spiritual inventory on your heart right now. But also remember this, that on the night that Jesus celebrated this meal with His disciples, they called it Passover. He changed the script to this meal. And He reduced it to the most portable pieces of the meal, the wine and the bread. But before He ever served it, some of you know what He did. He looked at those 12 guys that some days earlier had been feuding with one another. And He took off His outer garment. And He took a rag and a basin and a jar full of water. And He began to wash each of those disciples' feet. Even the feet that would deny Him later that day. Even the feet that would betray Him. He washed them. And then before serving the meal, He said, now listen, I've washed your feet and I've left you an example so that you might do the same for each other. And then He said, this meal, you take it in remembrance of me. Deacons, if you'll stand. When you receive the elements today, if you'll just hold them till it's time for us to take it, we'll take communion together. You see that you're going to receive a cup, a double cup. If you have trouble lifting it out of the cup, the two cups apart, just ask the person seated beside you. They'll help you. A little twist helps with that. The reason you're receiving both at the same time as this is we want you to be able to sit there and hold both elements in your hand. Both the bread that represents the body of Christ and the blood, the juice that represents the blood of Christ. On the night that Jesus was betrayed, he took the bread and he said, "This is my body, which is for you. Take, eat in remembrance of me." Likewise, he took the cup and he said, "This is the blood of the new covenant, which is poured out for you. Take, drink in remembrance of me." We're going to have a closing hymn now. And during this time, it is an invitation for you. There's 3 invitations today. If you're looking for a place to serve, that invitation is out those doors. And there's table and people out there that can help you sign up for a mission trip to Africa, or just simply to greet people on Sunday morning here at Snyder. The invitation also is this invitation. If you've been coming to Snyder for a while and you've decided, hey, these are the people that I want to partner in the good news of Jesus Christ with, come forward. Let us welcome you into the family of Snyder. And thirdly, if there's never been a point in your life where you've given your life to Jesus, Susie and I, our missions minister, we're here at the front, and we would love to talk to you about how you can have a relationship with God through Jesus. If you will, let's stand and come now as we sing.